She returned a lost wallet without taking a penny, not knowing the owner was a young millionaire who'd find love in her honesty. "Have you eaten dinner yet? And don't tell me it's instant noodles again," Lena said into her phone, balancing her tote bag on one shoulder as she stepped out of the bookstore. The golden wash of the setting sun spilled across the sidewalk, casting long, stretched shadows. Her younger brother's voice came through the line, slightly muffled by traffic. "Chill, sis. I had a sandwich. Sort of counts, right?" Lena rolled her eyes, smiling despite her fatigue. "That's not real food, Jamie." "You're not my mom," he teased. "But seriously, don't take the shortcut through 9th Street. It's getting dark." "I'll be fine. It's faster and my feet are killing me. Just be careful, okay?" Lena didn't answer right away. She looked up at the fading sky, hues of orange and lavender melting above the city. Another long shift, another day barely scraping by. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Talk to you later." She hung up and tucked her phone into her coat pocket. The bookstore was 2 buses and a 10-minute walk from home, but she'd gotten used to the routine. Tired legs, sore shoulders, silence. Turning down the quieter side street, Lena adjusted her scarf and kept walking, her boots clicking softly against the concrete. The wind had picked up, rustling wrappers and dry leaves along the curb. That was when she saw it. A black leather wallet lying near the edge of the sidewalk, half concealed by a damp newspaper. She slowed, frowned, then looked around. No one, not a soul on the street. No joggers, no dog walkers. Just her, the fading light, and the lost wallet. Cautiously, she picked it up. The leather was smooth and expensive, clearly not the kind you'd find in a bargain bin. She opened it slowly. Cash, lots of it. 50s and 100s neatly folded, a black credit card, one she recognized from a finance blog, the kind reserved for ultra-wealthy clients, an ID, Ethan Graham. She stared at the name. It felt oddly familiar, though she couldn't place it. A business card tucked behind the ID read, Graham Innovation. No phone number, just an email and a midtown office address. Lena exhaled, slowly. The weight of the wallet in her hand suddenly felt heavier than its contents. She sat down on a nearby bench, heart beating faster now. The street remained quiet, as if watching her decision unfold. She had been here before, not with a wallet, but with a moral dilemma. And what did she have to show for always choosing the right thing? A boyfriend who stole from her savings and vanished. A coworker who took credit for her ideas. A world that often looked the other way when someone tried to do good. Her fingers tightened slightly around the wallet. No one saw her pick it up. No one would know if she kept a little something, just a little. She looked at the cash again, then shut the wallet firmly. "Not who I am," she muttered. She wasn't naive. She wasn't a martyr. She was tired of being good in a world that didn't care. But even so, she couldn't stomach the idea of stealing. Doing the right thing wasn't about being noticed. It was about not hating the person she saw in the mirror. Clutching the wallet tightly, she stood and began walking again, a little faster now, as if afraid that second-guessing would catch up to her. Back in her apartment, a narrow third-floor walk-up that smelled faintly of books and cinnamon, she dropped her bag and turned on her laptop. She placed the wallet on the table like it might explode. Typing Ethan Graham into the search bar, she waited and blinked. Search results filled the screen instantly. Tech entrepreneur, CEO of Graham Innovations, young, reclusive millionaire, known for a few high-profile product launches and one major philanthropy campaign, rarely seen in public, net worth somewhere in the 9 figures. Lena leaned back, whistling low. "Well," she said aloud to the empty room, "of course it's not just anyone." She clicked on the company website and found a generic contact form. With a sigh, she drafted a short message. Subject, lost wallet. "Hi, I found a wallet on 9th Street with ID for Ethan Graham. Please let me know how I can return it. I didn't take anything, just hoping it gets back to the right person." She hit send and stared at the screen for a moment, then turned her gaze to the wallet again. She didn't know it yet, but in returning that wallet, Lena wasn't just returning lost property. She was opening a door to a life she had never imagined. The email arrived the next morning. From Assistant, at grahaminnovations.com. Subject: Lost Wallet. Dear Ms. Lena, thank you for your message. Mr. Graham has authorized us to retrieve the item. Please bring the wallet to our Midtown office anytime between 10 a.m. 4 p.m. today. Ask for Monica at the front desk. Best regards, Graham Innovations. Lena read it twice, feeling a strange tightness in her chest. There was no thank you for your honesty, no curiosity about how she had found it, no appreciation for the effort, just a cold, formal instruction, signed not by the man himself, but by someone paid to be polite. She looked at the wallet on her kitchen table, the same one she could have walked past, the same one she could have pocketed. Maybe she had expected something else. Maybe not a grand gesture, but at least the decency of a human acknowledgement. Still, she got dressed and took the train into Midtown. The Graham Innovations building was a towering monument of glass and steel, reflective and untouchable. The receptionist was sleek and sharp, barely glancing up as Lena approached. "I'm here to return a wallet. I was told to ask for Monica." "Take the elevator to the 14th floor," the woman said without looking up. "She'll meet you there." 14 floors later, the doors opened to a pristine waiting area that smelled faintly of citrus and new carpet. A woman in a beige pantsuit stood near the windows, checking her watch. "You must be Lena," she said, walking over briskly. "Thank you for coming." Lena nodded, pulling the wallet from her bag. "Here it is. Everything's in there." Monica took it with one hand and with the other offered a small white envelope. "Mr. Graham asked me to give you this, as a token of appreciation." Lena hesitated. "I didn't do it for a reward. It's standard," Monica said flatly. "We appreciate your time." Lena took the envelope anyway, just to avoid the awkwardness, and turned to leave. But the moment she stepped into the elevator, she opened it. A stack of crisp $100 bills stared back at her. She exhaled sharply, then shook her head. Her reflection in the elevator doors looked tired. Tired and strangely small, like the glass and steel had sucked all the air from her lungs. By the time she stepped out into the street, it had begun to rain. She stood at the corner, under no umbrella, watching people rush past with sleek coats and hurried lives, the envelope still in her hand. Then slowly she walked over to a nearby trash bin and dropped it in. Rain mixed with her hair, her coat, her skin. She was soaked in seconds, but didn't care. Her fingers curled into fists as she crossed the street, each step heavier than the last. She had done the right thing, again, and felt nothing but invisible. The sadness wasn't about the money. It was about feeling unseen, like her gesture was just another transaction in a world that no longer valued sincerity. A cab splashed water as it passed, and she gave a half laugh, half sigh. "Maybe Jamie was right," she muttered. "Maybe people like me just end up wet." What she didn't know, what she could never have guessed, was that high above her, on the 14th floor, someone was watching. Ethan Graham stood in his private office, arms crossed, staring at the security footage on his screen. He hadn't been in the mood to meet the girl who'd returned his wallet. People did nice things all the time, for cameras, for attention, for gain. His assistant had handled it like she always did, but something nagged at him. So he pulled the footage and watched. He saw her hand over the wallet without hesitation, saw her expression, guarded but genuine, saw how she took the envelope reluctantly, then left without waiting for anything else. Then he fast-forward and watched her drop the envelope into the trash can. He leaned back slowly in his chair, eyes narrowing, not in suspicion, but in surprise. She didn't want his money, didn't want a favor, didn't even want to be noticed. She had done the right thing, even when it cost her warmth, time, and pride, and yet she'd smiled in the rain. A small, sad smile that stayed with him longer than it should have. Ethan Graham, who had spent years navigating corporate sharks and curated flattery, suddenly couldn't stop thinking about the woman who walked away, not with money, not with credit, but with dignity. The bell above the door chimed softly as Ethan stepped into the old bookstore. The scent of paper and dust greeted him instantly, along with the low hum of a classical melody drifting from a radio behind the counter. He paused just inside, shaking off the light drizzle from his blue raincoat. The place was modest. Wooden shelves, slightly bowed under the weight of time-worn titles, floorboards creaking with every careful step. It didn't take long for him to spot her. Lena stood near the back, restocking a display of poetry books. Her hair was tied up in a loose bun, a pencil tucked behind one ear. She looked focused, not in a way that asked for attention, but in a way that spoke of someone used to doing things quietly, thoroughly, and with care. She hadn't seen him yet. Ethan adjusted his expression, suppressing the instinct to lead with his name or presence. He wasn't here as Ethan Graham, CEO. He was just a man with a question and a growing sense of curiosity. He wandered over to a nearby shelf, pretending to scan titles, until she finally noticed him. "Can I help you find something?" she asked, with a polite, neutral smile. Ethan turned toward her. "I was actually looking for a recommendation, something thoughtful, but not too depressing." Lena tilted her head, thinking, literary fiction? Memoir? Poetry? Surprise me. She studied him for a second longer, then pulled a book from the shelf and held it out. "The Remains of the Day. It's quiet, but it lingers," she said. "Kind of like regret." He took the book, glancing at the cover, then back at her. "Is that your pitch?" She shrugged. "I'm not much of a salesperson." "I am getting that," he said, a faint smile playing on his lips. There was a short pause. "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked, noticing the subtle designer touches, his watch, his shoes, the cut of his coat. Guilty. "Business trip?" "Sort of," he said, then added more carefully, "Sometimes I just like walking into places where no one knows who I am." Lena's expression didn't change, but something in her posture relaxed slightly. "That's rare these days," he looked at her. "Do you think being anonymous makes people more honest?" She considered that for a moment. "Maybe. Or maybe it just makes them braver." Ethan tapped the book against his palm, watching her. "Do you think good people always finish last?" That caught her off guard. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "What makes you ask?" "Let's say someone does the right thing, but no one thanks them. No one notices. Was it still worth it?" Lena looked away for a beat, as if measuring something. Then she said softly, "I think whether it's worth it isn't the question. The question is, can you live with yourself if you don't?" Ethan stilled. She went on, quieter now. "Getting hurt for doing the right thing, it happens, I know. But lying to yourself or cheating someone else, that's the kind of damage that doesn't fade, even if no one else knows." He didn't reply, couldn't, not for a moment. The rain picked up outside, pattering gently against the front windows. The store felt smaller suddenly, more intimate. Safe. Ethan cleared his throat, then asked, "Do you always speak that honestly to strangers?" "I try to speak the same way to everyone," Lena replied. "Makes things simpler." He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes, Lena noticed. And though she didn't quite smile back, something in her eyes warmed too. Just a flicker. She rang up his book, slid it into a small paper bag, and handed it to him without asking for his name. He hesitated at the door, then turned. "Thanks for the recommendation." Lena gave a small nod. "Any time." He stepped out into the rain, pulling up the hood of his blue coat. The book was tucked under one arm, but what lingered more than the story inside was the way she had looked at him. Like he wasn't anyone special, and somehow that made her the most interesting person he'd met in years. Ethan started coming by more often. At first, he told himself it was for the books, then, perhaps, for the peace. But by the third visit in a week, he knew the truth. He came for her. Lena never fussed over him. She didn't bat her lashes or try to impress. She offered tea if it was slow, a reading suggestion if he lingered, and occasionally a question that made him think harder than any board meeting ever had. "You don't strike me as someone who reads poetry," she said once, handing him a thin collection of Mary Oliver. He'd smiled. "That obvious?" "Just a guess," she replied, her tone teasing but kind. "But maybe you're the kind of person who needs it the most." He didn't deny it. Over the next few weeks their conversations stretched longer, sometimes about books, sometimes about life, and every so often, when the store was quiet and the rain tapped gently against the windows, something deeper slipped through. One chilly afternoon, Ethan sat across from her at the little wooden table by the front window. Lena was shelving used hardcovers nearby, her sleeves rolled up, a soft curl falling over her cheek. "You always seem steady," he said, sipping the herbal tea she'd offered, "like the world doesn't shake you." She gave a quiet laugh, not looking up. "That's funny. I felt like I'd been living in an earthquake zone for years." Ethan tilted his head. "What happened?" She paused, fingers resting on the spine of a faded novel. "I was engaged once," she said simply. "He was charming, smart, good with words, until he—" Ethan waited. "He emptied my savings account 3 weeks before the wedding, said he needed it for a business deal, disappeared the next day." Silence sat between them for a moment. "I lost everything. Money, trust, a sense of direction," she added. "But I promised myself one thing. I wouldn't let it turn me into someone bitter. I couldn't control what he did, but I could control who I chose to become after." Ethan swallowed, throat tight. She smiled faintly, still not looking at him. "So I don't trust easily anymore, but I also don't let pain decide my values." That night, Ethan lay awake replaying her words. In a world that had taught him to question motives, weigh outcomes, and prepare for betrayal, here was someone who had every reason to harden, but hadn't. He didn't tell her who he was. Not yet. He didn't want to risk changing how she looked at him. She made him feel like just a man, not a name, not a number, and for once, that was enough. One morning, a week later, he arrived early. Lena was out front, setting up a small rack of second-hand paperbacks near the sidewalk. Across the street, a hunched old man in tattered clothes sat with a sign, "Just hungry." Ethan stayed back, watching. Lena disappeared into the store for a moment, then re-emerged with a paper bag. She crossed the street quietly, knelt beside the man, and handed him the bag with both hands. He took it with shaking fingers. She smiled, touched his arm gently, then walked back without another word. No camera, no fanfare, no social media post. She didn't even glance around to see if anyone noticed. But Ethan had. He stood still, heart thudding. "She does good," he whispered to himself, "because she doesn't know how not to." That night, he wrote in his private journal, a habit he hadn't touched in years. "I've built my world around walls, efficiency, control, but she builds hers around care, not because it benefits her, but because it's who she is. I don't know what this is yet, but I don't want to look away." He didn't know when the admiration had begun turning into something warmer. He only knew that it was, and it terrified him, in the most beautiful way. The little cafe on the corner of 7th and Elm was one of Lena's favorites. It had mismatched chairs, pots of lavender on every table, and a chalkboard menu that changed with the weather. She liked the quiet charm of it, the way it felt like a place time had politely ignored. She and Ethan sat beneath a yellow-stripped umbrella, a shared pot of mint tea between them. The afternoon light filtered through the trees, dappled and warm. Their conversation drifted between favorite books, obscure movie quotes, and small, honest things. For a moment, everything felt perfectly simple. Until it wasn't. "Ethan Graham," a voice called out, loud and cheerful. Lena turned. A man in a sharp blazer, sunglasses perched atop his head, approached with the confidence of someone used to being heard. "I almost didn't recognize you without your entourage. What, the CEO of Graham Innovations now waits in line like the rest of us?" Ethan's smile faltered. "Hey, Leo!" Lena's heart skipped. "CEO? Graham Innovations?" Her eyes widened, locked on Ethan, searching his face for a denial, a correction, a joke. None came. Leo clapped Ethan on the shoulder, still grinning. "Good to see you, man. Don't forget the board dinner next week. We need that speech of yours to win them over." He left as quickly as he came, oblivious to the silence he'd dropped like a stone in the middle of their table. Lena sat frozen. "Lena," Ethan started. She stood. Her chair scraped loudly against the concrete. "So it's true?" He rose too, panic flashing in his eyes. "Please, let me explain." She shook her head, stepping back. "I need air." She didn't give him a chance to follow. She walked away, fast and quiet, down the tree-lined street until the cafe was out of sight. He didn't chase her, not yet. She didn't answer his texts that night or the next day, but on the third evening, just before closing, she found him outside the bookstore, standing alone, coat in hand, expression heavy. She paused a few feet away. "You lied," she said softly. "I didn't tell the whole truth," he replied, equally quiet. "Is that what we're calling it now?" "I didn't do it to hurt you, Lena," he said. "I did it because I didn't want to be that guy." She crossed her arms. "The guy who owns a tech empire but pretends to be interested in old books?" "No," he said. "The guy people only see for what he has." She looked away. "I've spent most of my adult life surrounded by people who smile because of my bank account," he said, "who flatter me, manipulate me, pitch to me, follow me. I got tired of not knowing who was real." "So you decided to lie to see if I was real?" He flinched. Lena's voice cracked, low and pained. "You were the first person I let close in years because I thought you were honest, ordinary, safe." Ethan took a careful step forward. "I am still me, Lena." She met his eyes, full of confusion and hurt. "But you started by hiding." "I know, and I regret it, every part of it. But when I saw you, when I saw how you treated me, not knowing who I was, I didn't want to lose that." There was silence. Then Lena said, almost in a whisper, "You're afraid people won't be real with you, so you lead with something that isn't real." Ethan swallowed hard. "I was wrong." She didn't respond. "I never expected to care this much," he admitted. "But I do. About your voice, your thoughts, the way you hand someone a book like it might save them." Lena blinked, but her gaze didn't soften. He nodded slowly, stepping back. "I'll go. But I needed you to know I didn't come into your life as a project. I stayed because I felt like myself around you, more than I have in years." He turned, walked into the night, and left her standing on the bookstore steps, torn between everything she feared and everything her heart had quietly begun to hope for. The envelope arrived in the early morning, slipped quietly under the door of the bookstore before Lena had even opened for the day. It was cream-colored, with her name written in a careful, slanted hand. No company logo, no signature. She almost didn't open it. Almost. But something about the stillness of it, the weight of what hadn't been said between them, made her slide her finger beneath the flap and unfold the single sheet inside. His handwriting was neat. Honest. "Lena, I grew up in a mansion where people wore suits to dinner and said, 'I love you,' like it was a formality. My mother passed when I was young. My father taught me how to win, but never how to feel. Kindness wasn't something we practiced. It was something we outsourced to staff. So I became very good at building walls. Success, strategy, control. But then I lost a wallet, and someone returned it without taking a single thing. No name, no expectations, just decency. And it shook something in me. You shook something in me. If you never want to see me again, I'll understand, truly. But if even one small part of you believes I meant every word, then please, don't stay silent." Lena read it 3 times, then folded it quietly and slipped it into her pocket. 2 days later, Ethan stood nervously at the corner of Maple and 4th, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans. He'd been invited by a single text from her that simply read, "Saturday, 8 a.m., no suits." She met him outside the bookstore with a paper bag of steamed buns in one hand and a mischievous glint in her eye. "No bodyguards?" she teased. He smiled, sheepish, left them all in the penthouse. "Good, you're spending a day with me now. No headlines, no hiding." They started at the morning market, a rows of plastic stools, the smell of broth and fresh herbs, aunties shouting prices over piles of fruit. Lena moved through it all like she belonged, greeting vendors, haggling for fun, slipping an extra banana into a little boy's hand when his mother wasn't looking. Ethan followed, a step behind at first, uncertain, but slowly something eased in him. When she handed him a cup of soy milk and told him to just drink it, don't read about it, he laughed. Really laughed. After breakfast, they walked to the library, where Lena volunteered on weekends. She introduced him to the librarian as a friend who wants to learn how to whisper properly. He spent the next hour helping her reshelve donated books, sneaking peeks at her when she wasn't looking, memorizing the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she read call numbers aloud. In the afternoon, they went to a local children's shelter. Lena was greeted with cheers and hugs. Ethan, at first overwhelmed, found himself drawing pictures with a shy little girl who only spoke in gestures. He made her laugh with a terrible hand-drawn cat. She gave him a sticker in return. Later, sitting on the curb, they ate sticky rice and grilled corn, sharing stories that weren't polished for interviews or romanticized for sympathy. "I always thought I had to be impressive," Ethan said quietly. "Had to be the smartest man in the room, the richest, the most in control." "And today?" Lena asked. "Today," he said, looking at her with a quiet smile, "I feel like I'm just alive." The sun began to set behind the rooftops. Lena leaned back on her hands, hair catching the gold of evening light. Ethan studied her for a long moment. "You know," he said, voice low, "you returned a lost wallet, but you took something with you." She looked at him, surprised. "Took what?" He touched his chest lightly. "Hope." She said nothing at first, then smiled, a real, full smile that reached all the places she had once closed off. And that smile, it felt like home. The little bookstore on Oak Street looked different now. The shelves had been polished, the walls repainted a warm honey gold. Plants hung in every sunlit corner, and the back section, once dusty and forgotten, had been transformed into a cozy reading nook with bean bags, donated blankets, and shelves labeled, "Take one, leave one." But the heart of it was still the same, and that was exactly how Lena had wanted it. 1 year had passed since the day she and Ethan had shared grilled corn on the curb and laughed like two people discovering themselves for the first time. In that time, they hadn't just fallen in love. They'd built something far bigger, the Honest Hearts Foundation. It started as a simple idea, to help people who did the right thing, even when the world didn't reward them for it. People like Lena had once been. People like the quiet janitor who turned in a briefcase full of cash and was fired for causing unnecessary attention. Or the woman who lived in her car but still returned a diamond ring she found in a public bathroom. With Ethan's resources and Lena's heart, the foundation found its shape. They provided small grants, housing referrals, job training, and, most importantly, dignity. They helped rebuild lives from the seed of one honest act. And today, on the foundation's first anniversary, they had chosen the most fitting place to celebrate, the little bookstore where it had all begun. Lena stood at the front, welcoming guests with warm tea and cinnamon rolls from the bakery next door. Ethan was beside her, more relaxed than the press had ever seen him. No suit, just a sweater and a grin that hadn't left his face all morning. They took no media interviews, made no grand speeches. Just a circle of friends, volunteers, and a handful of the very people they had helped over the past year. Each one carrying a story that had been turned into something hopeful. As the sun dipped low, casting amber light across the wooden floors, the crowd thinned. The last of the tea cooled in paper cups, and soft jazz hummed from an old record player in the corner. Ethan stepped away for a moment, returning with a small, weathered book in hand. Lena looked up as he approached. "Find a new favorite?" "Maybe an old one," he said, handing it to her. She took it, turning it over in her hands. The Little Prince. Its spine was cracked, the pages softened by time. "Open it," he said softly. She flipped through the front pages until a small velvet box tumbled gently into her palm. Her breath caught. She looked up. Ethan's voice was quiet. "I wanted to do this here, where the story began." She opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring. A sapphire set in a band of rose gold, delicate and timeless. "I spent so long being afraid," Ethan said, "of being seen for what I had instead of who I was. But you saw me before you even knew my name, and now I want to spend the rest of my life seeing you, learning you, loving you." Lena blinked quickly, tears rising. "I don't know what chapter this is," he continued, "but I know I want to write every page with you." She smiled, her voice thick with emotion. "This is the part where I say yes, right?" He laughed, soft and shaky. "Ideally?" She nodded, slipping the ring onto her finger. "Yes." And then, surrounded by the scent of old paper, the warmth of shared stories, and the hum of quiet joy, they embraced. Two people who had once felt lost, now home in each other. Outside, the world kept spinning. Inside, a promise had been made between the pages. The rain came just as the lights in the bookstore flickered on. Not a storm, just a soft, silver drizzle, falling gently over the street like a memory returning. The kind of rain that didn't chase people away, but drew them closer, made them share umbrellas, pause in doorways, and look up at the sky with quiet hearts. Ethan stood at the edge of the old bookshop's front step, his coat unbuttoned, hair beginning to dampen. The shop glowed behind him, warm, golden, alive, just like her. He looked down at the small box in his hand. Inside, next to the ring that already rested on Lena's finger, he had placed a folded note. Not typed, not dictated, just a few words, written with a trembling pen and a full heart. "I don't know how to begin again, but if I can begin with you, then I'm ready to learn everything all over again." He exhaled slowly and waited. The door creaked open. Lena stepped out, barefoot. She had kicked off her shoes hours ago inside the store, tired from hosting but glowing in that unspoken way only happiness can explain. Her dress clung gently to her frame, raindrops beginning to form tiny constellations on the fabric. She saw him, and she smiled, the kind of smile that made the world tilt just a little. Ethan took a step forward, then dropped to one knee on the old stone step. The very place where, months ago, she had once stood, tired, soaked from the rain, holding a wallet she could have walked away with but chose not to. It was the place she had unknowingly changed his life. Now, it would be the place he'd ask her to spend the rest of it with him. He held up the box. "I didn't get it all right the first time," he said, his voice steady despite the storm of feeling inside him. "I started with silence, with walls, with fear. But everything I've learned about love, I've learned from you." Lena's hand covered her mouth, her eyes shimmering beneath the curtain of raindrops. "You gave me back more than a wallet," he continued. "You gave me back wonder, simplicity, hope. You showed me that being real doesn't mean being weak, that honesty can still live in this world." He opened the note, held it up to her. "And I mean every word. I don't know how to be perfect, Lena, but if I can start again with you, I'll spend my whole life learning how." Tears welled in her eyes, but it wasn't sadness. It was everything she had held in for years. Every letdown, every betrayal, every moment she thought she'd never be enough for someone to choose, and now this. Here, rain falling gently, a man on one knee, not because she fit some mold, but because she had loved without asking to be loved back. She knelt down too, cupping his face in her hands. "I'm not afraid of loving the wrong person anymore," she whispered, voice cracking. "I'm just afraid of walking away from the right one." He laughed, breath catching, and pulled her into his arms. Their foreheads touched, their laughter mixed with the soft rhythm of rain. Around them, unnoticed at first, people began to gather. Familiar faces from the foundation, elderly couples in ponchos, children from the shelter with sticker-covered raincoats, volunteers holding books over their heads to block the drizzle. Someone began to clap, then another, then everyone. It wasn't loud, not boisterous, just warm, gentle applause that echoed off the brick walls and soaked sidewalk. A celebration not just of two people, but of what they stood for. Of kindness without reward, of truth without filters, of love without conditions. Ethan kissed Lena's forehead, then her hand, and finally her lips. The crowd cheered, umbrellas forgotten, rain baptizing the moment like a blessing. Behind them, the bookstore's signs swung softly in the wind, and above them the sky broke open just enough for a thin sliver of orange light to peek through the clouds. Dusk trying to hold on to the day a little longer. Later, when the guests had gone and the rain had faded into a memory, Ethan and Lena sat together on that same step, fingers intertwined. He looked at her and said, "One day someone's going to ask how we met." "And what will you say?" she asked. "I'll say I lost something I didn't even know mattered," he replied, "and I found someone who returned it, along with my heart." Lena smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "You returned mine, too." And so, on an old step in the rain, in front of a little bookshop with big stories, two hearts promised to write their own, together, page by page, forever. Sometimes, all it takes is one honest act, a wallet returned, a truth told, a heart opened, to change everything. Lena didn't expect love when she chose to do what was right, and Ethan didn't expect healing when he chose to follow her light. But in a world that often rewards the loudest voices and the flashiest masks, their story reminds us that real love begins quietly, with kindness, with trust, with the courage to simply be true. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Soul-Stirring Stories, where every story is crafted to heal, to inspire, and to remind you that goodness still lives quietly in the corners of the world, waiting to be seen. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, keep believing in love that's real.